The warning lights flashed red across the Earth Defense Station as Admiral Jake Morrison stared at the massive shapes appearing on his screens. 12 enormous alien ships had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Each ship was huge, over 2 kilometers long, with crystal-like hulls that sparkled in the distant sunlight. "Sir, they're bigger than anything we've ever seen," said Captain Ryan Burke from his position at the sensor station. His voice was steady, but Jake could hear the worry underneath. Each one of those ships could destroy our entire fleet. Dr. Lisa Kane, the station's chief scientist, moved closer to examine the readings. "The energy signatures are incredible. Their shields alone are putting out more power than our biggest space stations." She looked up at Jake with wide eyes. "Admiral, these aren't just warships. They're floating cities." Jake nodded grimly. He had been expecting this day for years, ever since Earth's long-range scouts had detected signs of a vast alien empire expanding through the galaxy. But seeing the reality was different from reading reports. These ships were works of art as much as weapons of war. Their hulls were covered in strange markings and what looked like battle honors from conquered worlds. The communication system crackled to life, and a deep, alien voice filled the command center. "Primitive beings of the third planet, I am War Prime Zephak of the Catherian Empire. Your species has been evaluated and found suitable for incorporation into our domain." Jake stepped forward to the communication panel. "This is Admiral Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. What are your intentions in our solar system?" A harsh laugh echoed through the speakers. "Intentions? We do not explain our intentions to lesser species. However, your cooperation will determine whether you survive the transition. We have conquered 47 star systems. Your choice is simple. Submit to the Catherian Empire as a tribute species or face complete annihilation." Dr. Kane whispered urgently to Jake. "He's broadcasting on all frequencies. Everyone on Earth is hearing this." War Prime Zephak continued his message. "To demonstrate the futility of resistance, you will send your finest warships to our position for inspection. We wish to examine the pathetic tools you call weapons before we decide your fate. You have 6 hours to comply." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in shocked silence. Jake looked around at his crew. They were good people trained for this moment, but he could see the fear in their eyes. The alien ships on the screen looked like they could tear apart planets. "Sir," Captain Burke said quietly, "our entire active fleet consists of 15 cruisers and 30 smaller escort ships. Against those monsters—" He didn't finish the sentence. Ambassador Alex Stone, Earth's top diplomat, had arrived during the alien transmission. He was a calm man who had negotiated peace treaties across the solar system, but even he looked shaken. "Admiral, we need to buy time. If we send ships, it might show we're willing to talk. Or it might just give them target practice," Jake replied. He studied the alien fleet again. The ships were arranged in a perfect formation, showing off their size and power. Everything about them screamed superiority and arrogance. Dr. Kane was analyzing the sensor data. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours in some areas. Those gravity shields could probably stop anything we have, but—" She paused, looking thoughtful. "There's something strange about their formation. It's very rigid, very formal, like a parade." Jake made his decision. "Ryan, signal the Defender, Guardian, and Sentinel. Tell them to prepare for a diplomatic mission." These were 3 of Earth's newest cruisers, sleek ships that looked impressive even if they were tiny compared to the alien vessels. "Those are our best ships, sir," Captain Burke said. "If something goes wrong." "Something's already gone wrong," Jake replied. "The moment those ships appeared in our system, we were in trouble. At least this way we might learn something useful." As the 3 human ships prepared to depart, Jake walked to the observation deck. Earth hung below like a blue marble, peaceful and beautiful. Billions of people down there were going about their normal lives, not knowing that their entire future might be decided in the next few hours. Engineer Sam Collins appeared beside him. Sam was heading to the Defender as part of the inspection team. "Admiral, what are our real chances here?" Jake was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, if this comes down to a straight fight between their ships and ours, we'll lose in minutes. Those things out there aren't just bigger than our ships. They're from a completely different level of technology." "Then why are we sending ships at all?" "Because," Jake said slowly, "sometimes the best way to win a game is to make the other player think they understand the rules." He turned to Sam. "When you're on that alien ship, keep your eyes open. Look for anything that might be useful. And remember, they think they know everything about us based on our ships. Let them keep thinking that." Sam nodded and headed for the transport shuttle. Jake watched the 3 human cruisers leave the station and begin their journey toward the alien fleet. The ships looked brave but small against the vast darkness of space. Hours later, the human ships reached the alien formation. Jake watched through long-range sensors as the tiny human vessels approached the massive Catherian flagship. The alien ship was called the Worldbreaker, according to their transmissions. It was 3 kilometers of crystalline armor and weapon systems that defied human understanding. Captain Burke's voice came through the communication system from the Defender. "Admiral, they're bringing us aboard their flagship. The docking bay alone is bigger than our entire ship. Stay alert, Ryan. And remember, you're representing all of humanity." As the human delegation disappeared into the alien ship, Jake settled in to wait. The next few hours would determine whether humanity had a future or would become just another conquered species in the Catherian Empire. War Prime Zephak's voice echoed across space one more time, broadcasting to the entire human fleet. "Your pathetic toys amuse us, humans. When we are finished examining them, you will understand why resistance is meaningless. The Catherian Empire has instruments of divine destruction. You have children's playthings." Jake clenched his fists as he listened to the aliens' mocking laughter. Let them laugh, he thought. Let them think they understand everything about humanity based on 3 small ships. They would learn soon enough that appearances could be very deceiving. Captain Ryan Burke tried not to show his amazement as he walked through the corridors of the Worldbreaker. The alien ship was like nothing he had ever imagined. The walls were made of some kind of living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. The ceilings stretched up so high that they disappeared into shadows, and the corridors were wide enough for 10 humans to walk side by side. Engineer Sam Collins walked beside him, his eyes constantly moving as he tried to memorize everything he saw. Behind them, Ambassador Alex Stone maintained his diplomatic calm, but Ryan could see him taking mental notes of every detail. War Prime Zephak met them in what could only be called a throne room. The alien commander was over 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished metal. His eyes glowed with an inner light, and when he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Welcome aboard a true instrument of war, humans," Zephak said, gesturing with one of his massive hands. "Your small minds cannot comprehend what you are seeing, but perhaps you can appreciate the beauty of superior technology." The alien led them through the ship, proudly showing off each system. In the weapons bay, Ryan saw cannons that were larger than his entire ship. War Prime Zephak explained that each weapon could fire concentrated plasma hot enough to melt through the core of a planet. This single cannon, Zephak said, patting one of the massive weapons, destroyed the capital city of the Helix Nebula civilization. They thought their energy shields made them invincible. "We proved them wrong in 17 seconds. Sub-Commander Velkris, Zephak's second-in-command, joined the tour. She was smaller than her commander, but no less intimidating. "The Helix people had technology centuries ahead of what we detect from your species," she told the humans. "Yet they fell before the might of just one Catherian battleship." Sam tried to hide his interest as they showed him the ship's power core. It was a contained star, burning in a chamber the size of a city block. The energy it produced could power all of Earth's cities for 1,000 years. "How do you control something like that?" Sam asked, trying to sound merely curious. "Through mastery of gravitational forces," Velkris replied proudly. "We can create gravity wells, manipulate space-time itself, even generate miniature black holes as weapons. Your species has barely learned to escape your planet's gravity. We have learned to command gravity as a tool." They moved to the bridge where hundreds of alien technicians worked at stations that seemed to float in midair. Holographic displays showed the entire solar system, with every human ship marked and tracked. Ryan felt his stomach sink as he realized the aliens knew the exact location of every vessel in Earth's fleet. "Your ships register as primitive chemical rockets with basic energy weapons," War Prime Zephak said dismissively. "We have encountered Stone Age species with more threatening technology. Yet you seem intelligent enough to serve a purpose in our empire." Ambassador Stone finally spoke up. "What kind of purpose?" "Administrative functions, perhaps. Record keeping. The Catherians require efficient management of our conquered territories. Your species shows signs of organizational ability, if not military strength. The alien commander led them to an observation deck where they could see the rest of the Catherian fleet. Each ship was unique, covered in markings that told the story of their victories. Some ships had the hulls of conquered vessels welded to their sides as trophies. Each of these vessels has conquered entire star systems. Zefak boasted. The ship you see there, the Void Crusher, single-handedly destroyed a civilization that spanned 12 planets. The species there thought they could hide their worlds behind artificial suns. We extinguished their suns and claimed their worlds in the same day. Sam watched the display of alien technology with growing concern. Every system he saw was designed for massive, overwhelming force. Their weapons could destroy continents. Their shields could withstand the explosion of stars. Their ships moved through space like flying mountains of destruction. But something nagged at him. For all their power, the alien ships moved in rigid formations. Every system seemed centralized, controlled from single command centers. When he asked about backup systems, Velcris looked confused. Why would we need backup systems? Our technology does not fail. Our power sources do not weaken. We build things correctly the first time. War Prime Zefak decided to demonstrate his fleet's capabilities. Perhaps seeing our weapons in action will help you understand the futility of resistance, he said. The human delegation was brought to the observation deck as the Catherian fleet moved toward a large asteroid field. War Prime Zefak selected a target, an asteroid about the size of a mountain. Weapons officer, demonstrate the gravitational lance. One of the smaller Catherian ships fired a beam of twisted space-time at the asteroid. The massive rock simply ceased to exist, crushed into a point smaller than an atom. The energy release lit up the darkness like a small sun. That asteroid contained enough iron to build 1,000 of your largest ships, Zefak said casually. We erased it with a single shot from our smallest vessel. Another demonstration followed. A different ship created a miniature black hole and used it to tear apart an entire cluster of asteroids. The display of power was overwhelming. Each shot released more energy than humanity's most powerful nuclear weapons. Captain Burke felt the weight of despair settling on his shoulders. How could anyone fight against weapons like these? The aliens could destroy Earth's entire fleet without even slowing down. War Prime Zefak seemed to read his thoughts. You begin to understand, human. The Catherian Empire has perfected the art of war. We do not merely defeat our enemies. We demonstrate our absolute superiority so completely that resistance becomes unthinkable. As the demonstration continued, Sam noticed something interesting. The alien weapons were incredibly powerful, but they all seemed designed to fight large targets. The gravitational weapons locked onto massive objects. The plasma cannons were built to destroy ships or cities. Everything was scaled for warfare between giants. Your empire has fought many wars, Ambassador Stone observed. Have you ever encountered enemies who fought differently? Smaller forces, perhaps? Sub-Commander Velcris laughed. Smaller forces are not forces at all. They are insects to be crushed. Any species advanced enough to threaten the Catherian Empire builds ships like ours. Power requires size. Strength requires mass. This is the way of all civilized warfare. War Prime Zefak agreed. We have encountered species who tried to build many small ships instead of few large ones. They learned quickly that quantity cannot defeat quality. One Catherian battleship can destroy 1,000 lesser vessels. The tour concluded in the war room, where Zefak showed them battle recordings from his previous conquests. System after system had fallen to the Catherian fleet. Species that resisted were wiped out completely. Those that surrendered became slaves. You humans have 72 hours to make your choice, War Prime Zefak announced. Submit to the Catherian Empire or join the extinct species in our battle records. There is no third option. As the human delegation prepared to return to their ships, Sam managed to slip away briefly and record some technical readings with a hidden scanner. The power signatures he detected were staggering, but they also revealed something important. All that power flowed through centralized systems. The alien ships were incredibly strong, but they were also incredibly complex. War Prime Zefak escorted them personally to their departure bay. I hope you will choose wisely, humans. Your species shows potential. It would be unfortunate to add your planet to our list of purified worlds. As the human shuttle left the world breaker, Captain Burke looked back at the massive alien fleet. 12 ships that could destroy civilizations, operated by beings who had never known defeat. In 72 hours, humanity would have to choose between slavery and extinction, or so the aliens thought. Admiral Jake Morrison sat in the secret conference room, buried deep beneath Earth Defense Command. The room didn't appear on any official building plans, and only 12 people in the entire solar system knew it existed. Around the table sat the real leaders of humanity's military forces, people whose names never appeared in public records. General Kate Walsh looked up from the intelligence reports. She was a small woman with gray hair, but her eyes held the hardness of someone who had spent 40 years preparing for this exact moment. "So they gave us 72 hours to surrender," she said calmly. "How generous of them." Dr. Ben Taylor, the head of humanity's most classified weapons programs, activated a holographic display. Based on Engineer Cullen's scans, their technology is everything we feared and more. Each of those ships has enough firepower to crack a moon. But Sam also confirmed something very important. Jake leaned forward. What did he find? Everything they have is centralized. Single power cores, unified command systems, concentrated weapon arrays. They build their ships like fortresses, with all the important systems in heavily armored core sections. Captain Nina Ross, the commander of Earth's most secret military unit, smiled grimly. "That's exactly what we hoped to hear. For the past 2 centuries, humanity had been preparing for this day. Not the day when aliens would arrive, but the day when they would face an enemy with overwhelming technological superiority. Human military planners had studied every conflict in history where a smaller, weaker force had defeated a larger, stronger one. They had learned valuable lessons. "Show them the real fleet," Jake ordered. Dr. Taylor's holographic display changed. Instead of the 15 cruisers and 30 escort ships that the aliens had detected, the display now showed the true scope of humanity's military forces. 15,000 strike craft, each no larger than the alien shuttles, were hidden throughout the solar system. Phase 1 was making them think our visible fleet was everything we had, General Walsh explained. Phase 2 was letting them see exactly what they expected to see. A primitive species with big, slow ships that fight the way they do. Captain Ross activated another display. "But we don't fight the way they do. We learned from Earth's history. We studied how ants defeat creatures 1,000 times their size. We examined how viruses overcome the strongest immune systems. We analyzed every successful guerrilla war, every David versus Goliath victory." The display showed the hidden strike craft in detail. Each ship was only 50 meters long, but packed with advanced technology that the aliens had never detected. They were coated with materials that absorbed sensor beams, powered by fusion reactors that produced almost no electromagnetic signature, and armed with weapons designed for one purpose: destroying targets much larger than themselves. Each strike craft carries 12 antimatter torpedoes, Dr. Taylor explained. That's enough explosive power to vaporize a city block. They also have quantum disruption charges that can interfere with gravitational fields and energy cascades that can overload centralized power systems. Admiral Morrison studied the tactical display. "How many do we have ready for deployment?" "All 15,000 are operational and in position," Captain Ross replied. "They've been hiding in asteroid fields, inside space debris, and even camouflaged as disabled satellites. The crews have been living in those ships for months, waiting for this moment." Dr. Lisa Kane, who had been listening silently, spoke up. "I've been analyzing the aliens' psychological profiles based on their communications. They have a fatal weakness: they cannot conceive of defeat. Their entire culture is built on the assumption that superior technology guarantees victory." General Walsh nodded. "That's why they're showing off instead of just attacking. They need to prove their superiority. They need their enemies to acknowledge their power before they destroy them. Which gives us the element of surprise," Jake realized. "They think they know everything about human capabilities because they've seen our 3 biggest ships." Captain Ross activated another section of the display. "But that's just the beginning. We've also weaponized 17 asteroids with hidden fusion charges. We have antimatter mines disguised as space junk scattered throughout their formation. And we've converted 43 civilian stations into hidden weapons platforms." The scope of humanity's preparation was staggering. For 200 years, while building their public space fleet, they had also been creating a shadow military that existed in the spaces between planets. Every asteroid mining operation had been a cover for hiding weapons. Every civilian transport had been designed to carry concealed military hardware. "The aliens fight like medieval knights," Dr. Taylor observed. "Honor, glory, individual combat between mighty champions. We're going to fight like antibodies attacking an infection." Jake walked to the tactical display and studied the alien formation. "What's our primary target?" "Their command ship, the Worldbreaker," Captain Ross replied. "Take out War Prime Zefak and their rigid command structure will collapse." "These aren't independent ship captains. They're components in a centralized military machine." Dr. Kane added her analysis. "Their psychology works against them here too. They're so convinced of their superiority that they won't adapt quickly to an unexpected form of attack. By the time they realize what's happening, it will be too late." General Walsh brought up the timeline. "We have 18 hours before their deadline expires. How long do we need to get all our assets in position?" "They're already in position," Captain Ross said. "Our strike craft have been moving into attack formation for the past 6 hours. The alien sensors can't detect them because they're not looking for anything that small and stealthy." Commander Ben Parker, who had been silent throughout the briefing, finally spoke. "Admiral, what if this doesn't work? What if their technology is so advanced that even our full fleet can't damage them?" Jake looked around the table at the faces of people who had dedicated their lives to this moment. "Then humanity dies fighting instead of living as slaves. But I don't think it will come to that." "The aliens made one crucial mistake." "What mistake?" Dr. Kane asked. "They assumed that because our technology isn't as advanced as theirs, our strategy wouldn't be either. They think in terms of ship-to-ship combat, fleet-to-fleet battles. They've never faced an enemy that fights like a swarm." Captain Ross smiled coldly. 15,000 ships, each one expendable, each one carrying enough firepower to cripple a battleship. They can destroy our individual ships, but they can't destroy us all. And we only need to get through their defenses once." The meeting continued for several more hours as they refined the attack plan. Every detail was examined and re-examined. The timing had to be perfect. The coordination had to be flawless. Humanity would get only one chance to surprise the aliens. As the meeting concluded, Jake made one final announcement. "Operation Swarm begins in 14 hours. Everyone knows their part. Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting to prove that intelligence and adaptability can defeat raw power." As the participants left the secret conference room, they carried with them the hopes of an entire species. Above them, the alien fleet waited in perfect formation, confident in their overwhelming superiority. War Prime Zefek had no idea that the empty space around his ships was actually full of humanity's real military force. 15,000 predators were moving silently through the darkness, preparing to show the Catherian Empire that size and power meant nothing against unity and determination. The countdown to humanity's survival had begun. The 72-hour deadline expired exactly at solar noon, Earth time. War Prime Zefak had expected the humans to surrender long before the final moment, but their silence had been absolute. Now, as he stood on the bridge of the Worldbreaker, he felt a mixture of disappointment and anticipation. "Sub-Commander Velkris, signal the fleet to advance on the third planet," he ordered. "These humans are more stubborn than intelligent. We will demonstrate the cost of defying the Catherian Empire." The 12 massive alien battleships began moving toward Earth in perfect formation. Their crystalline hulls gleamed in the sunlight as their weapons charged with enough power to shatter continents. War Prime Zefak watched the 3 human cruisers that had remained at the edge of Earth's orbit. They looked pathetically small against the approaching alien fleet. Captain Ryan Burke, aboard the EDF Defender, opened communication channels to the Catherian flagship. "War Prime Zefak, Earth's answer is no. We will not surrender to your empire." The alien commander laughed, the sound echoing across space. "Then you have chosen extinction, humans. Your bravery is admirable but pointless. Witness the power of true civilization." The Catherian fleet opened fire. Massive beams of concentrated plasma streaked across space toward the human ships. The 3 cruisers launched their missiles and fired their energy weapons in return, but their attacks barely scratched the alien shields. The human ships twisted and dodged, using every bit of speed and maneuverability they possessed, but they were clearly outmatched. War Prime Zefak smiled as he watched the unequal battle. "Record this engagement for the Imperial Archives. Future species will learn from humanity's foolish courage." The first human ship, the Guardian, took a direct hit from a gravitational lance. The ship crumpled like paper, its hull crushed by forces that twisted space itself. The crew never had a chance to scream. 2 ships remaining, Sub-Commander Velkris reported. "Their weapons are completely ineffective against our shields." But War Prime Zefak frowned as he studied the tactical display. Something was wrong. The remaining human ships weren't trying to flee. Instead, they were broadcasting continuously on all frequencies, sending out streams of data that made no sense. "What are they transmitting?" he demanded. "Unknown, War Prime. The signals appear to be targeting coordinates and movement patterns." That was when the swarm emerged. Space around the Catherian fleet suddenly filled with thousands of small craft that seemed to materialize from nowhere. They appeared from asteroid fields, from behind space debris, from within what had looked like empty vacuum. The alien sensors designed to track large ships had completely missed the approaching human fleet. "Impossible," War Prime Zefak roared. "Where did they come from?" Pilot Jack Harrison led the first wave of human strike craft toward the Worldbreaker. His ship was tiny compared to the alien flagship, barely visible against the massive crystalline hull, but he wasn't alone. 500 human craft moved with him in perfect coordination, weaving between the alien weapons like a school of fish avoiding a predator. The Catherian gunners tried to target the small human ships, but their weapons were designed for ship-to-ship combat between massive vessels. The gravitational lances passed harmlessly around the nimble strike craft. The plasma cannons were too slow to track targets that moved like angry insects. "All units begin attack run Alpha," Commander Maria Santos broadcast from her hidden command ship. "Remember, we only need to get through once." The human pilots had trained for this moment their entire careers. They flew their ships with inhuman precision, guided by artificial intelligence systems that calculated optimal attack routes in real time. When the aliens destroyed human craft, the explosions provided targeting data for the next wave. War Prime Zefak watched in growing horror as the first group of human ships reached his flagship. The tiny vessels fired antimatter torpedoes that punched through his shields like bullets through tissue paper. Explosions bloomed across the Worldbreaker's hull as the human weapons found their targets. "Damage report," he shouted. "Hull breaches on deck 7 through 15. Power fluctuations in the primary gravitational core. We're losing attitude control." But the human attack was just beginning. While the first wave engaged the Worldbreaker, thousands of other strike craft swarmed the remaining Catherian ships. They attacked like antibodies, destroying an infection, targeting the centralized systems that kept the massive ships operational. Sub-Commander Velkris tried to coordinate a defense, but the Catherian fleet had never faced an enemy like this. Their tactics were built around formal battles between large ships, not swarm attacks by countless small opponents. War Prime, the Void Crusher, is reporting critical damage. The humans are targeting our power distribution networks. Another Catherian ship, the Starbreaker, began listing to one side as human strike craft destroyed its gravitational control systems. The massive vessel fired desperately into space, but for every human ship it destroyed, 10 more took its place. Jack Harrison's fighter was hit by alien defensive fire and began spinning out of control. As his ship died around him, he activated the final protocol that every human pilot had memorized. His craft became a guided missile, ramming into the Worldbreaker's primary sensor array in the explosion that lit up the darkness. "Target the command ships first," Maria Santos ordered. "Take out their coordination and they can't fight as a unit." The human swarm moved with a fluidity that bewildered the aliens. When the Catherians concentrated their fire on one group of attackers, human ships appeared from a different direction. When they tried to protect one area of their ships, the humans attacked from another angle. War Prime Zefak realized with growing dread that his fleet was losing. Ships that had conquered star systems were being overwhelmed by tiny craft that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. The Doomhammer exploded in a ball of antimatter fire as human ships targeted its reactor core. The Planet Killer began breaking apart as its structural supports failed under coordinated attack. "How is this possible?" Velkris gasped as another Catherian ship fell to the human swarm. "They're primitives. Their technology is centuries behind ours." War Prime Zefak watched a group of 50 human ships coordinate an attack on the World Render. They moved like a single organism, each ship playing its part in a larger pattern. When the alien ship's defenses destroyed some of the attackers, the survivors instantly adapted their approach. They're not fighting like individuals, he realized. They're fighting like a single mind controlling thousands of bodies. The Catherian formation, which had seemed so powerful and intimidating, became a liability. The rigid positioning that had displayed their strength now made them easy targets. The human ships flowed around the alien vessels like water around rocks, always finding new angles of attack. Commander Santos watched the battle from her command ship, coordinating the swarm through quantum communication links. Each human pilot was connected to the others through artificial intelligence networks that allowed them to fight as one unified force. War Prime Zefak, she broadcast to the alien flagship. Your Empire's time is over. Surrender now and we'll allow your surviving crews to live. Never. War Prime Zefak roared back. The Catherian Empire does not surrender to insects. But his defiance was hollow. In 2 hours of combat, 8 of his 12 battleships had been destroyed or crippled. The remaining 4, including his own flagship, were heavily damaged and surrounded by thousands of human strike craft. The aliens had fallen into the same trap that had destroyed countless armies throughout human history. They had confused size with strength, technology with strategy, and individual power with collective force. As the battle raged around him, War Prime Zefak began to understand the terrible truth. The humans hadn't built a fleet to match Catherian ships. They had built a weapon specifically designed to destroy them. Every aspect of human strategy had been crafted to exploit the weaknesses of centralized, hierarchical military forces. The swarm pressed its attack, and the last great fleet of the Catherian Empire began to fall. War Prime Zefak stood in the smoking ruins of his bridge as human strike craft swarmed around the world breaker, like angry hornets. Emergency lights cast red shadows across broken control panels, and the great ship shuddered with each impact from antimatter torpedoes. His mighty fleet, which had conquered 47 star systems, was dying around him. War Prime, Sub-Commander Velcris reported through the static of damaged communication systems. The Starender and Voidcrusher have been destroyed. The Planet Killer is breaking apart. We are the last functional ship. Through the cracked viewport, Zefak could see thousands of tiny human craft surrounding his flagship. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons trained on his ship's critical systems. Any attempt to flee would result in instant destruction. Admiral Jake Morrison's voice came through the communication system, calm and professional. War Prime Zefak, this is Admiral Morrison of Earth Defense Command. Your fleet is defeated. I'm offering you one chance to surrender with honor. Zefak's 4 hands clenched into fists. In 300 years of military service, he had never heard those words directed at him. The very concept of surrender was foreign to Catherian culture. Yet here he was, trapped by creatures he had dismissed as primitives just hours before. How? He transmitted back, his voice filled with disbelief. Your ships are inferior. Your weapons are primitive. By every measure of military science, we should have crushed you in minutes. Dr. Lisa Kane, who was aboard Admiral Morrison's command ship, answered the question. War Prime, you made the same mistake that many superior forces have made throughout history. You confused technological advancement with strategic thinking. The human fleet maintained its position around the surviving Catherian ships. Over 2,000 strike craft had been destroyed in the battle, but nearly 13,000 remained. Each one carried enough firepower to cripple a battleship. Captain Ryan Burke, who had survived the destruction of the Guardian by ejecting in an escape pod, was now aboard Morrison's flagship. Your ships are incredibly powerful, he told the alien commander. But power means nothing if you can't hit your target. War Prime Zefak struggled to understand how his invincible fleet had been defeated. We studied your military capabilities. Your largest ships, your most advanced weapons, your defensive systems. We planned for every possible threat. You studied what we wanted you to study, Admiral Morrison replied. For 2 centuries, we've maintained a small visible fleet for exactly this purpose. Every alien species that visits our system sees the same thing. A primitive civilization with basic space technology. Commander Maria Santos, who had coordinated the swarm attack, explained the human strategy. We learned from our own history, War Prime. Every successful underdog in human warfare used the same principles. Mobility over size, adaptability over strength, intelligence over raw power. The alien commander felt his worldview crumbling. But your technology is centuries behind ours. How could inferior science defeat superior engineering? Dr. Ben Taylor, the architect of humanity's hidden weapons, answered from his laboratory on Earth. Because we didn't try to match your technology, War Prime. We built weapons specifically designed to destroy ships like yours. Every antimatter torpedo, every quantum disruptor, every stealth system was created with one goal: defeating centralized military forces. War Prime Zefak looked around his ruined bridge. His crew members were staring at him, waiting for orders that he couldn't give. Their rigid military hierarchy, which had been their strength for so long, had become their weakness when faced with an enemy that fought like a living organism. "Your empire has conquered 47 star systems," Dr. Kane observed. "How many of those civilizations fought the way you do? Large ships, formal battles, centralized command?" "All of them," Zefak replied slowly. "It is the only logical way to wage war between advanced species." "No," Admiral Morrison corrected. "It's the only way you knew how to wage war. But humans learn different lessons from our history. We learned that the strongest army doesn't always win. Sometimes the smartest army does." Sub-Commander Velcris, who had been listening in growing amazement, asked the question that haunted her. "How did you coordinate so many ships? The complexity of controlling 15,000 individual craft should be impossible." Captain Nina Ross, who had trained the human pilots, explained. "We didn't control them individually. We connected them through artificial intelligence networks that allow them to fight as a single organism. Each pilot makes their own decisions, but they're guided by shared intelligence that optimizes the entire swarm." War Prime Zefik realized the full scope of his defeat. The humans hadn't just beaten his fleet. They had demonstrated a completely different philosophy of warfare, one that his empire had never encountered. "What are your terms?" he asked, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. Admiral Morrison's terms were surprisingly modest. The Catherian Empire would withdraw from human space and establish a non-aggression pact. No tribute would be demanded, no territory claimed. In exchange, humanity would share certain non-military technologies and establish limited trade relations. "That's all?" War Prime Zefak asked, confused. "You could demand our surrender, claim our ships, conquer our territory." "We're not conquerors," Admiral Morrison replied. "We're survivors. We fight when we have to, but we prefer to live in peace." As the formal surrender was arranged, War Prime Zefak requested a private communication with the human admiral. "Admiral Morrison, I must ask you something. How did your species develop such a ruthless approach to warfare? Your tactics showed no honor, no glory, no respect for individual combat." Morrison was quiet for a long moment before answering. "We didn't develop it for War Prime. We developed it for survival. Every challenge in our history taught us the same lesson. The individual is expendable, but the species endures. We learned to fight not for glory or dominance, but because we refuse to die." The alien commander considered this. "Your people fight like a plague, spreading and adapting until they overwhelm their target." "We fight like humans," Morrison corrected. "We use our intelligence to overcome our weaknesses. We work together because we're stronger together than apart, and we never ever give up." In the days that followed, the Catherian survivors were allowed to repair their remaining ships and return to their empire with news of their defeat. War Prime Zefak carried with him the knowledge that the galaxy contained forces he had never imagined. The news of humanity's victory spread quickly through the galactic community. Other species, who had heard rumors of the mighty Catherian fleet, were amazed that such a powerful force had been defeated by a seemingly primitive civilization. Several alien governments sent diplomatic missions to Earth, not as conquerors but as potential allies. Admiral Morrison, now recognized as one of the greatest military strategists in galactic history, maintained humanity's policy of modest appearance. The visible Earth defense fleet remained small and unassuming. Visiting aliens saw exactly what they expected: a young species with basic space technology. Meanwhile, the hidden swarm continued to grow. New strike craft were built and deployed throughout the solar system, invisible to alien sensors. Humanity had learned that the greatest weapon wasn't the biggest gun or the strongest shield, but the enemy's assumption that they understood your capabilities. War Prime Zefak returned to the Catherian Empire a changed being. His defeat had shattered his people's belief in their own invincibility, but it had also opened their minds to new possibilities. Within a few years, the rigid Catherian military began experimenting with smaller, more flexible ships and distributed command structures. Dr. Kane, who had studied the psychological impact of the battle, noted in her reports that the aliens' greatest weakness had been their inability to imagine defeat. They had built their entire civilization on the assumption that superior technology guaranteed victory, never considering that their enemies might fight by different rules. Years later, Admiral Morrison kept a small model of the World Breaker on his desk in his retirement home. Visitors often asked if it was a trophy from his greatest victory. Morrison would smile and shake his head. It's not a trophy, he would explain. It's a reminder. The greatest victories don't come from building bigger weapons or stronger ships. They come from understanding that every enemy has weaknesses, every problem has a solution, and every species that survives long enough eventually learns the most important lesson of all. Which is, his visitors would ask, that the universe doesn't care how advanced your technology is. It only cares whether you're smart enough to adapt when the rules change. And in the depths of space, hidden among asteroids and debris, 15,000 human strike craft continued their silent patrol, ready to protect Earth from any threat that might emerge from the stars. The galaxy had learned to respect humanity not for their size or strength, but for their intelligence and their absolute refusal to surrender. The age of human civilization in the galaxy had begun,